Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our online academy at the Aquarium of the Pacific. My name is Alicia, and I'm excited to be joining you this afternoon. We're going to be exploring all about marine mammals today and some conservation issues surrounding these amazing critters. So, here in Southern California, we have so many wonderful marine mammals right off of our coast. Now, just to take a pause really quick, I'm so excited to talk about this. I almost forgot that you can join in the conversation with me today. I have my friend Amanda, who is doing our controls, and my friend Dave, who is taking your questions today and passing those along for me. And you can text your questions along. Our number is 562-286-1838. Now remember, it's best to have permission from an adult, and there are normal fees that are associated with doing those text messages. So again, if you have any questions, you would like to join in the conversation, you think you have a cool fact that I forgot to mention, please go ahead and text those in and we can share those for everyone. And I will say that, I am an educator, but I am always learning. That's one of my favorite parts of my job. So if there's something that you're like, oh, you have to share this, or hey, we should talk about this. If we don't get a chance to talk about it during our program today, a half hour is not too long to talk about all the amazing marine mammal characteristics and, a species that we have off of our coast, then feel free to email us. We have our email at live@lbaop.org. Also, if, of course, you're watching this after our live session. All right, so again, we have some amazing species right off of our coast. And, when the aquarium is up and running again, you can see some of these species here at the aquarium. You can even get on a boat and see them right off of our coastline. We have quite a few of these in our own backyards here in Southern California. Now, let's just review. What makes a mammal, right? So some things to think about as we're exploring. In fact, let's talk about our very first mammal and consider some of these things. I wanted to start with the smallest marine mammal out there. Ta-da! And a very, very adorable face. I really can't compete with our sea otters that we have here at the aquarium. So this is a sea otter. And the sea otter is really elegantly showing you one of those characteristics that make a mammal a mammal. And sea otters have this lovely fur coat. They have the thickest fur coat of any animal on the planet. So they have enough really in just this tiny little space, they say, to cover a whole German Shepherd dog. So that's just almost 650,000 to 1 million hairs per square inch, which is amazing. Now, they have all of this hair. They have that really, really thick fur coat to help them stay warm. So you have to really think about the environment that they live in. So having hair, just like we have hair, is a mammal characteristic, right? They also give live birth, just like we do, right? So we have some of these shared characteristics. That's our second one. They are warm-blooded, and we're warm-blooded because we're mammals as well, but we live in very different environments. If we were going to get into our Pacific Ocean right now, which is probably in the 60 range for degrees, that's pretty cold. We would get chilled pretty quickly. So marine mammals have to have very special adaptations to stay warm because this is the habitat where they find their food, live, survive, and raise their young. So our sea otter here has a really thick fur coat to help it do that. So we talked about, breathing air. And that's another important thing to consider if you're a mammal that lives out there in the ocean. So even though you might have thought, what about whales and dolphins? Are they mammals? How are they surviving out there if they have to breathe air like we do? Well, they are really good at holding their breath, and we'll talk about some of the other adaptations they have for those deeper dives, especially for our toothed whales. We'll talk about which really, our toothed whales and our seals, which really hold the record for deep dives. And I think I'm missing one. What am I missing? So I said they have live birth, hair, warm-blooded. Oh, and they produce milk. They're mammals, right? They drink milk as babies. And so that's really important for them as well. Our cute little sea otters here will nurse their young while floating on their back. and provide those nutrients for their young. So you have to have all 5 of those things at least one time in your life. Now, again, back to our sea otter here, looking at all of this fur, you might also see some very specialized hair near the face of this animal. So those whiskers, those vibrissae, really help for animals that are living in the ocean, and as you dive deeper into the ocean, you might lose visibility. It might become darker. So there are other marine mammals like sea lions and seals that also have these specialized whiskers on their face that help them navigate as they dive a little bit deeper. Let's show a few. I think we have some more sea otter footage here as we talk about these marine mammals. They're so cute. So you'll see that sea otters can crawl out onto land. Here at the aquarium, we use this opportunity to train our sea otters. We can check them to make sure that they're nice and healthy. We can give exams, we can brush their teeth. So training is an important part of the sea otter's life here at the aquarium. Keeps them interested, their mind's really active, and again, helps them participate in their own health care. In their natural habitat, though, they would spend a lot of their time out in the ocean. They wouldn't come to land very often because there are predators that take advantage of kind of that awkward step they make as they come out of the water. So sea otters will even sleep out there in the ocean. And oftentimes they form a grouping called a raft, and they'll link paws or be really close to each other. They'll even wrap themselves or even their babies in the seaweed, in that kelp, so they don't float away, making it a little bit easier for them to save their energy without floating away. So sea otters are pretty clever. Now, sea otters eat things found at the bottom. So they have to be pretty good about swimming down and collecting their food. And we do have sea otters here at the aquarium if you've ever come to visit them. You might notice that they share their home with lots of little fish. They don't eat those fish, even though a lot of people ask, how can they live together? Well, the fish aren't really worried because, one, the sea otters get food delivered to them, and they're very excited about that. And two, the sea otters typically eat bottom-dwelling, or we call benthic animals. So they love to eat things with shells, crabs, clams, shrimp. Ooh, they love their shrimp. Here's a picture of them eating their shrimp. And they'll even eat prickly sea urchins. Now that kind of goes into that conservation side that I wanted to talk to you about. So there is always, of course, a balance in an ecosystem. There are predators and prey, and their relationship usually balances out. Well, unfortunately, during the fur trade in the early 1900s, sea otters were being wiped out because of this beautiful fur that we talked about. They were being hunted almost completely to extinction. And they were able to put some initial protections in for the sea otter. And those initial protections really went a long way, and sea otters were able to make a comeback. And they're now currently, along with all marine mammals, protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act that happened in 1972. Now, sea otters are making a very slow comeback, but their numbers are doing okay. I wouldn't say that they're back to their original numbers, but they're found in our central coast all the way up to Alaska. And you can find them, for example, in the Monterey area, Morro Bay area, I think is pretty south in their range. And their numbers are in that area about 3,000, give or take. So sometimes they're a little bit more, sometimes they're a little bit less. Ooh, I have some good questions here. So do whales and dolphins have hair and fur? Ooh, I'm so glad you brought that up because we just talked about having hair or fur being a characteristic of being a mammal. Well, you don't really see a big furry whale. That would be pretty funny though, right? Can you imagine a big furry whale? So they actually have another way of staying warm. So the sea otters use the very, very dense thick fur coat to trap air, kind of like our clothing traps a layer of air, and then our body heats it. A whale, a dolphin, a seal, or a sea lion, they have blubber all around their body. So they don't have a need for hair like our sea otter friends do. But you know what? Because they are a mammal, we can't see it, but they do have little hair follicles all around their body. And sometimes even from these little bumps that you're seeing on their face, there's like 1 or 2 hairs that stick out. And I'll tell you a secret. Little dolphins are born with a little furry mustache on their lip. And when they go to nurse from mom, it tickles mom and lets her know that, okay, time to unleash the milk. And the milk is really, really thick. It's kind of like cottage cheese. And so it has to be thick. Do you see any, they have kind of lips, but not like lips like us. So when they nurse, they have to be quite coordinated to catch that really thick yogurt-like milk that comes out. And so that hair is used when they're babies to help mom because they don't have little hands and it's hard to see when you're kind of a big oval shape that your baby is ready to nurse. So yes, they do have hairs. It's used a little differently, and of course we can't really see them. Another great question is, do sea otters eat kelp? Well, I hadn't really finished telling my story, right? We said sea otters were disappearing, and I'm so glad you asked that. They don't eat the kelp, but they do eat something that eats the kelp. So they eat little tiny sea urchins. They're these prickly little balls. They're a little invertebrate. They have no spine, but they do have a shell, and they nibble on the bottom of the seaweed. And if the seaweed, sure, we'll go ahead and take a look at the kelp forest. So there we go. So at the very bottom, there might be, some sea urchins. If the sea urchins nibble away too much, then the kelp forest actually starts to be lost because the kelp will float away. And so although they don't eat the kelp, they do eat the little animals that would overeat or overgraze in the kelp forest. So when we saw a disappearance of sea otters, there were too many urchins. And unfortunately, that meant that we lost not only sea otters, but kelp forest as well, and all the animals that would normally live in those habitats. This is a great segue to the next animal that I wanted to talk about. Anybody recognize? We said we're going to bring a kelp forest. This is a big group of sea lions. Now, I know it's a sea lion versus a seal for a couple different reasons. I'm going to bring my model out here in addition to showing you the photo here. So the sea lion has a little ear flap. So if you feel your ears, this is an extra part on our bodies that help us funnel sound. Now for a sea lion, this is kind of like an extra thing that they have. I don't think in their little folded state, it's helping them a whole lot capture sound, but it does help protect their little ear hole. So even if our seals, which we'll take a look at in a little bit, don't have the ear flap, doesn't mean they don't have ears. They just don't have an outside part to their ear. So this is one way that we know it is a sea lion. So anytime you see a picture, regardless if it's called a seal or a sea lion, because there are some that are named a little incorrectly, it is in the group that would be associated with sea lions. The other big thing that tells me that this is a sea lion is how they move through the water. So we'll take a look again at our sea lions swimming. Perfect. Sea lions, oh look, and there's a seal for us to compare. Sea lions use their front flippers, these are called flippers, to really move and push themselves through the water. There we go. They're very agile on the rocks. They can roll around. They can fold their back flippers under. And in comparison, this seal is moving around kind of like an inchworm. So this is my example of the seal, and we'll watch this again because it's pretty cute. So there's the harbor seal down there. And they kind of just move like this through on land. They're not very graceful. And they swim differently in the water. So my harbor seal uses its fins back and forth and kind of steers with its front. You can kind of see it moving. While the sea lion glides through like this. So seals, sea lions, and walruses are similar. They have some similar characteristics that put them all in the category called pinnipeds. And that means flipper-footed. Here we go, some additional footage of, wait, this is your quiz. Is that a seal or a sea lion? Okay, I'm gonna let you decide. I'm gonna answer some more questions here. Great questions. How does the water not go into a blowhole? Ooh, that's a great question. So if we take a look, now our This type of marine mammal doesn't have a blowhole, right? Can you guess what type of marine mammal might have a blowhole? Well, we'll take a look at this photo a little bit later. It's kind of hard to see on this one. I think we have another photo that we might show you. There we go. So this is a whale. Whales have blowholes. So we're transitioning a little bit from our seals and sea lions friends. And by the way, if you were guessing in that video, it was a sea lion, a sea lion. Did you get it because of the ears? Okay, good. Yay! So I'm hearing from Dave that we have a few people who are guessing in that it was a sea lion. Good job, you passed the test. All right, now if you have questions about seals or sea lions, we can definitely go back and talk to them. We'll probably talk about them a little bit more as we talk about diving. But I do want to move on to some of our whale friends. And this is a really great transition, so thank you for asking the question. These things up here, so we're looking right now, it's kind of hard to see, looks kind of like just a big gray log. This is the back of a gray whale. About 40 to 45 feet is their length, and they're found right off of the California coast during parts of the year as they make their migration. And we know that it's a certain category of whale because they have 2 blowholes. Now, a blowhole is kind of like taking your nose and sticking it on the back of your head. Now, I don't know if you like being in the swimming pool as much as I do, or the ocean. Can you imagine? It would look weird. It would look really weird. But can you imagine how much easier it would be to swim if you had a blowhole, your nose on the back of your head? Now, it is true that as they dive, you don't want water to push itself into either your nose as a person or if your blowhole as a whale. Now, it does close automatically for them, but it does gather a little bit of water just at the opening. And so when the whale does come up and it opens, it shoots the water that's gathered right on the top out, and that allows us to see that blow. So if you've ever been on a whale watch cruise, there you go. We can actually identify a whale because of the blow. If you're a big blue whale, then you can have a 15 to 20 foot blow. So a blue whale, the largest animal on the planet, which off of our coast gets to be about 70 to 80 feet long. And that's not even the biggest that have ever been recorded. They've been recorded at 115 feet, which is amazing. They have these incredibly large blowholes. Now, the gray whale that we just saw, the smaller, so about 40 to 45 feet, has a little heart-shaped blow. And that's because of the way that the blowholes are shaped. Now, I'm going to take a step back, and these are great questions, and tell you a little bit about whales. So there are 2 main groups of whales, and we group them based on what's in their mouth. So if you are a whale that has baleen, we call it baleen whale. I'm going to show you an example here. So if they have baleen in their mouth, this is one big group of whales. The second group, and we'll look at those next, have teeth in their mouth. So we'll start with our baleen whales here. And baleen are lots and lots, and I'll show you in just a moment under our camera what those might look like, are little plates. Well, I say little, they can be really big. They're plates of keratin, the same stuff that makes up your hair and your nails, and they're kind of these hairy plates that make up the roof of the mouth of the whale. And I think I have another diagram that shows kind of what whales do with their, there we go. So this is a little illustration that shows you the whale will dive in. This is the tongue, this is the jaw, just kind of showing you what it would look like. The whale opens its mouth, and it uses the baleen to gather oftentimes either anything from small fish down to very tiny plankton or drifting animals, could be fish eggs in the water. So it will then go ahead and close its mouth and force the water through those baleen plates and trap its food. Now I'm going to go over to my document camera and show you a little piece of what we call baleen. Now this is from I'm going to zoom out here. This is from our gray whale. Gray whales have kind of this blonde color baleen, and it's a lot shorter and, they'll go this way. It's a lot shorter and thicker than some of the other species. And that's because gray whales are nicknamed mudsuckers. They hunt primarily up in Alaska, and they will swim down to the bottom. Now, I did say that whales eat smaller things. Some whales, like the gray whale, have a very particular prey. They love to eat their prey on the bottom of the seafloor, little tiny invertebrates, and they'll swim down, they'll turn their body to the side. Now, just like us, they can be left or right-sided, and they'll wear down their baleen more on one side or the other. So if they smile, their baleen might be shorter on one side than the other. So they lean to their favorite side, they suck up the mud, and they do that same filtering process, and they catch little invertebrates that are in these hairy plates. Now, as it wears down, more of the plate becomes exposed. Just like if I'm not going to, because this is a special piece for us, but if I were to pull on one of those, it would just start to unwind here. So as it's growing more out of the roof of its mouth this way, this will continue to extend this line. So more of it becomes unpacked, I would say. It's pretty incredible. So this is an example of that baleen. If you were a big whale with a big mouth, like a bowhead whale, they can have incredibly tall baleen, taller than me. This is a fin whale eating fish. So like I said, sometimes they eat fish. And maybe we can watch that just one more time. So we'll go back to another shot and then come back to this one. Now, something special that these baleen whales have is an expandable throat. And those they have ventral pleats, as they call them, allow them to expand out and then take in water. Now, a fin whale or a blue whale, which is about the same size off of our coast, even though the blue whale can average much larger, they can take in about 17,000 gallons of water at a time, which is incredible. Can you imagine? And again, using a tongue that is huge. For a blue whale, again, the largest animal on the planet, they can have a tongue that weighs as much as the largest land animal, which is the African elephant. And they need that to push that 17,000 gallons of water through their baleen plates. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and answer a few questions here. How much do gray whales weigh? They average about 90,000 pounds. And that's not even the biggest whale. And that's a huge amount. So gray whales, maybe we'll go back to our little gray whale photo here. Gray whales are really, I think they're kind of adorable. They're a little bit more shy. They're on a mission when we see them. They're either traveling from their home in Alaska all the way down past our coast, down to the warm waters of Mexico to have their babies, or they're traveling back up north with their little calves in tow. And so they're a little shy. They're also hunted by orca whales. So they have to hug the coastline and try to be as stealthy as possible so they're not eaten by one of their main predators. Now, in the shot that we just looked at, we had a gray whale, and you might have seen all of those white patches. Well, we're also looking at some animals that live on top of the whale. There are special barnacles and even whale lice that only live on whales. Weird, right? Look at this whale. This whale is covered in barnacles and covered, actually that little that orange piece, that is a huge whale lice. Now, they get pretty big. There is a huge home here, and the barnacles and the whale lice will transfer from mom to baby. So first days of life, they already start having little colonies grow on them, which makes me itchy, but I understand. That's just something that they live with. Are whales endangered? Thank you, Bella, for that question. They are, the IUCN has listed them as vulnerable. So whales are protected off of our coast, but they still face different kinds of challenges. So some of those challenges, really differ between the different kinds of whales. And we'll hopefully get a chance to talk a little bit about that before we wrap up. Joshua asks, where are the seals? Where are the teeth on the whales? Ooh, we're gonna take a peek at that category next. And where are the teeth for the? Oh, okay. And I have another one here. Is where are the seals? Okay, great. So teeth. You're interested in teeth, which is a great place to look. Now, my background, actually Amanda's too, is in zoology. And we like to look at the different parts of animals to help give us clues about those animals. And so we look at anatomy. Now, here is probably a pretty famous animal. And this one is an orca whale, as we had talked about earlier. Now, some orca whales, not all of them, but some of them specialize in eating other whales. So they are also nicknamed killer whales. And they average anywhere from like 16 feet to 18 feet. They can get a little bit bigger in the 20s, but they're not that big. I think sometimes we imagine them as huge because they are predators, but they do have some really interesting adaptations to help them be efficient hunters. Now, we had talked about gray whales, fin whales. We saw some pictures even of humpback whales in the beginning. Those are all those baleen whales. Our orca friend here is that next category, those toothed whales. And so looking inside our mouth, I have an example of a false killer whale, which is another type of toothed whale, jaw. And I'll show you how big this is in just a moment. Now, looking at these teeth here can tell us a little bit about, let's see if I can zoom out a little bit more. And, whoops, wrong way. I'm going to make it a little darker so that there's not such a glare from the color. So this is a model. It's not real, but it's made to look museum quality. So it's made to look exactly like this, what the animal would have. And so it's the same size and even texture, and it's made from a cast. So something that was replicated from a real animal at one time. So this is, again, plastic, but it's a really good representation of what it would look like. What do you notice about these teeth? Yeah, they're conical or cone-shaped. They're all the same, and they have a pretty good bite. We're just looking at the lower jaw. So if you think about the teeth in your mouth and what you have at the very bottom of your mouth, this is very different. We have some of these rounded teeth in our mouth, but if you think about, what do we use? I'm going to show you what this looks like in my hands. So 2 layers of this, the top and the bottom jaw, we use our top and bottom teeth that are rounded like that in the front for grabbing. And that's exactly what our orca whales do and our other toothed whales. Now, dolphins, because of their teeth, are actually put into a group called dolphins. I'm sure you've heard of them. They're the largest group. They're the largest member of the dolphin family. And here's an example of another animal that we have off of our coast. This is the bottlenose dolphin. And we have actually what we call nearshore and offshore bottlenose, which the near shore, so closer to shore, they're a little bit smaller, and the offshore tend to be bigger. They are actually quite large dolphins. And we have another question here. Why do whales breach and slap their fins? So breaching means to jump. And here we have a fin whale jumping out of the water. So there's a lot of theories on why an animal might leap out of the water. It could be for whales to communicate, which is what a lot of scientists think, depending on, are there other whales in the area and they want to show off? Sometimes they might be happy they're jumping out of the water. There are some theories that they might have an itch, and because they only have these little flippers on the side, they can't scratch them. They might actually breach because they're a little itchy. Now, if you remember that gray whale and all those things growing on it. Makes me itch a little bit. So they think that there might be some of those breaching behaviors because of kind of signaling to other animals. Now, let's go ahead and just take so we've looked at a couple examples of those toothed whales. I wanted to show you an example of another toothed animal. This is a type of porpoise. And porpoise just means that it's still a toothed whale, it just has slightly different teeth. This is the most endangered toothed whale or whale in general. This is the vaquita, and it means little cow in Spanish. So this animal is found in only one location in Mexico, and they're really cute. So they're about the size of a bicycle. They're very small, they're very petite, and this is the baby here. So we don't have a lot of photographs of them. Now, unfortunately, this animal we talked about conservation issues. Unfortunately, this animal is very close to extinction. And so when we first started here at the aquarium to talk about the vaquita were already pretty small in numbers. So they started doing some surveys, and they were doing surveys using listening devices because the vaquita live in a gulf that's really thick. It's murky. It's really hard to see them, and they're very, very shy, and they're very, very small. And so they were either seeing them or hearing them, or they were seeing them caught in nets. And the people that were catching them in nets weren't doing it on purpose. They were a victim of what we call bycatch. So bycatch means the unintentional catching of an animal. And so we were losing vaquita very, very quickly. So they were first recorded at probably 567 as a total number. This is a total number in their population. And then they thought, oh man, we're going to go do another census and see how many are out there. And you can see their numbers were dropping more and more and more. So this number 30 was in 2016. Right now, the last census they did in 2019 last year, they were only able to record about 9 animals, which is a very, very low. Here's one of the very few real photographs of a vaquita porpoise. So when I was talking about issues facing a lot of marine mammals, one of those is overfishing, or sometimes these illegal practices. Now, in the place that they live, there was a lot of illegal fishing for not only, or there's fishing that's happening at a rate that is hard to replace the number of fish out there, but there was also a lot of illegal fishing for an animal that's about the same size called the totuaba. And the totuaba is a fish that is valued for its swim bladder, which is an organ that captures air that allows the fish to be buoyant in the water. And that fish is protected, but there was an illegal trade for it. So there's kind of two things happening, both overfishing for shrimp fisheries in the area and the illegal fishing. And no one was purposely trying to go for the vaquita. But unfortunately, the numbers dwindled. Now it is a protected species. No one is able to fish in that area. But unfortunately, that is very hard on the communities that live in this area too. Now, when we think about conservation issues, we have to also remember the people that are involved and making sure that there are options for everybody. Conservation issues are always people issues. So thinking smart on our side about where our seafood comes from, how our seafood is collected, can impact animals like the vaquita, can impact animals like sharks. So if you joined us for our shark in conservation talk, we talked a lot about sustainable fishing practices. And even other animals around our aquarium are affected by overfishing, like the penguins we talked about a little bit earlier today. So overfishing and unsustainable fishing practices have an impact that's felt throughout our oceans. And again, that's taking animals out before they have a chance to replenish. And that means that there's not enough food for the animals in the ocean, or it means that the animals are being caught in those nets, or even breaking up or destroying habitats as those things are being caught. So those three issues all kind of blend in with that unsustainable fisheries. Now, we've talked a lot today. I know I'm a little over my time. Again, I think if I had another 4 hours, we could still be talking about a lot of these critters. If you still have questions, you have comments, you have things to add, you can always join the conversation after our program today at live@lvaop.org. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I really appreciate all the questions and the participation. I do want to leave you with a resource that you can use. You can find it on our website called Whales Voices in the Sea. And if you wanted to listen to the different kinds of sounds that whales, dolphins, and other animals make, or just get some cool fun facts, you can bring that up. Again, that's Whales Voices in the Sea. You can just search for that at aquariumofpacific.org. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.